Studio microphone hook, voiceover style. Have you ever seen an object so ordinary, yet felt it watching you back? A simple teacup, silent, still, but what if inside it, something was alive, something that remembers every face that ever looked into it? Tonight, you will discover the secret of the last teacup. A story that begins with a sip, and ends where reality itself disappears. I walked into the dimly lit living room. The faint scent of tea drifted through the air. The old wooden table in the corner was empty, except for a single teacup. The teacup was simple, yet it drew my eyes. I felt a cold chill from the wooden surface. My hand almost shook as I reached for the cup. The wind brushed through the window, making the curtains flutter. It sounded like a faint whisper. I smelled the tea again, familiar yet strangely unsettling. The tea in the cup was so clear I could almost see through it. But as I stared, a face appeared in the liquid. A face unfamiliar, trembling as if trying to warn me. I stepped back, my heart pounding. Everything around me was silent. Even the ticking clock sounded faint and unreal. I tried to set the cup down on the table, but my hand felt icy. The tea began to spill as if it had a life of its own. The wooden floor became damp. The smell of tea grew stronger, sharp enough to sting my nose. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. Suddenly, the face in the tea moved. It looked at me with eyes full of pain. A faint laughter echoed in the room. I tried to scream, but my mouth would not move. My hands shook uncontrollably. The teacup began to float above the table. The tea swirled around me like it had its own will. The teacup hovered in the air, spinning slowly as if guided by an unseen hand. I could feel the heat radiating from it, though the room was cold. Every hair on my body stood on end. The swirling tea glimmered like liquid silver under the dim light, reflecting distorted images of the room. I tried to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the floor, heavy and unyielding. A whisper floated through the air, soft and urgent, almost pleading. I could not understand the words, yet my mind felt as if it knew them. The face in the tea moved closer to the surface, its eyes hollow and desperate. I blinked, thinking it might be my imagination, yet the reflection remained, sharper and more real than anything I had ever seen. The smell of tea intensified, turning from comforting to suffocating. It was no longer the gentle aroma I had known. It was pungent, almost metallic, like blood mixed with leaves. I felt a sudden pressure in my chest, a weight pressing down, making it difficult to breathe. The teacup floated closer to my face, and I could see its contents clearly now. The face in the tea was not just a reflection. It was alive. The lips moved, forming words I could not hear. The eyes widened, staring directly into mine, full of anguish and silent screams. I reached out instinctively, my fingers trembling. As I touched the cup, the liquid surged upward, spilling over the edges without ever wetting the table. It formed shapes in the air, like smoke but denser, darker, curling around me. The room seemed to twist and bend. Walls elongated, shadows grew longer and thinner, creeping along the floor and ceiling like living things. I felt a cold breeze wrap around my ankles, climbing up my legs, freezing me to the bone. The whispering grew louder, surrounding me from all directions, echoing in my ears. I could no longer tell where the sound came from. The teacup's surface rippled violently, as if something beneath it was thrashing. Then the face in the tea opened its mouth, wider than any human mouth should, and a scream erupted, not a sound I could hear, but a sensation I felt in my bones. My entire body shook violently. I fell to my knees, clutching at the floor, but the ground felt like it was shifting, alive under me. The swirling liquid began to rise higher, forming a vortex above the cup. Shapes emerged within it, faces, hands, eyes, twisting, reaching, writhing in silent torment. I realized with horror that the teacup was not just tea. It was a doorway. Something was coming through. The air grew heavy with the scent of decay and old paper, like a forgotten attic filled with rotting memories. My vision blurred. I could see fragments of other rooms, other times, flickering like broken memories behind the liquid surface. The faces in the tea turned toward me, one by one, as if acknowledging my presence. I tried to scream, to run, to break free, but my body refused to obey. The vortex grew larger, pulling at me, tugging at my very soul. I could feel an invisible hand brushing against my mind, probing, testing, questioning. A sudden flash of pain struck the base of my skull, sharp and searing. I fell forward, and my hands hit the floating tea as it descended slowly toward me. The liquid was cold now, icy, seeping into my fingers, climbing up my arms. Images exploded in my mind, faces of strangers, moments of sorrow and anger, memories that were not mine. Each vision burned like fire in my brain, yet I could not look away. I tried to blink, tried to close my eyes, but the images pressed against my eyelids, forcing themselves in. The teacup hovered above my face now, almost touching my lips. The smell was unbearable: metal, earth, something long dead, something waiting. The whispering was now screaming, filling my mind with impossible words, twisting meanings, warping my thoughts. Suddenly, the teacup tilted. Tea spilled over me, over my face, and into my mouth. I gagged, choking, tasting the bitterness of memories not my own, of fears not mine to bear. The faces in the liquid screamed silently, their mouths open in eternal anguish. I could feel something inside me shift, something dark and unfamiliar clawing at my consciousness. I tried to pull back, but the room was gone. There were no walls, no floor, no ceiling, only the vortex of faces, of tea, of screaming shadows. It pulled me in, closer and closer to the teacup, and I realized that I could not escape. The last thing I saw before my vision went black was my own face in the tea, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a silent scream. Then I was inside it. I was floating among the liquid, among the faces, among the whispers. The teacup had consumed me. And yet, somewhere deep within, a part of me was still watching, waiting, aware. The room outside remained silent, the wooden table empty once more. Except for one thing, another teacup appeared on the corner, simple and unassuming, filled with clear, still tea. It waited. It was ready for the next hand to reach out. Days passed, but the memory of that teacup never left me. I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a trick of light and imagination. Yet every time I entered the living room, I felt the same pull, the same weight in the air. One evening, I returned home to find the room unchanged. The wooden table sat in the corner, empty, except for a teacup. It was identical to the one before, simple, serene, almost inviting. I hesitated, my hand hovering above it. A whisper brushed against my ear, soft and familiar, carrying no words but an unmistakable warning. I did not touch the cup. Instead, I stepped back, heart pounding, and slowly walked out of the room. The door closed behind me, the click echoing like a seal. I never returned to that corner, never reached for a teacup again. Yet sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I feel it, cold, alive. Waiting. The last teacup remains on the table, unmoved by time. It waits patiently for the next hand, the next curiosity, the next soul drawn to its surface. And somewhere deep in the silence, I can hear the faintest whisper, urging me to never forget. The teacup does not age, it does not break, it simply waits. And I know, with a certainty that chills my very bones, that it always will. The room is empty, yet its presence lingers, a silent reminder that some curiosities are best left untouched. I step away, but in the shadows of my mind, the last teacup sits forever, a quiet, haunting sentinel.